Hello and welcome to this ACEN online event all around writing across the professions. It is such a privilege to bring this event to you today. It is a truly international collaboration that we're going to bring to you, and this is really exciting for our Australian network. My name is Dr. Bonnie Dean. I'm from the University of Wollongong, but I am the chapter chair of the ACEN New South Wales ACT committee, and it's my absolute delight to bring this session to you today. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge country. Across Australia, we are all part of many First Nations countries. Here in Wollongong, where I'm currently located, this is Dharawal country, and that is the country of the Wadi and Yuin peoples. Please take a moment, if you can, to write in the chat the nation in which you're currently seated on, and also the area in which we identify that across Australia. Please feel free to do that in the chat now. And as you're doing that, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal persons, especially those who are here online with us today, and recognise those First Nations people emerging and current and past as well. Well, we are so excited. We're going to have many speakers today. We've got 4 speakers to bring this topic to you today, which is all about writing across the professions. The way today will work is that we're going to hear a presentation that will go for approximately 20 to 25 minutes. Then we're going to go into breakout rooms where we will have a conversation where we can delve deeper into these insights around writing and transfer. Just some housekeeping for you. If for any reason technology collapses, what I'll get you to do is log off and log straight back in to the same link. If that's not working for you, hang around your email for some further instructions. I also invite you now to keep your videos off and yourself muted just during the presentation. But when we're in those breakout rooms, I really want you to engage and converse and collaborate. So that's where we'll unmute ourselves and put our videos straight back on. We are currently recording this session as well, so that is to ensure that we've got a resource that's available on the ACEN website for you to refer to in the future. Okay, well, I'm about to introduce you to our 4 speakers today, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to, first of all, to Dr. Kara Tazak, and Kara is a visiting assistant professor from the University of Central Florida. Thanks so much for joining us, Kara. We also have Dr. Ina Alexandra Mahua, who is a postdoctoral researcher, interdisciplinary college for university teaching and learning from Goethe University in Germany. Now it's 3 a.m. for Ina currently. So Ina has pre-prepared a video for us as part of the presentation, and a big warm welcome to you, Ina, who might be watching this video back. We have Professor Michael John De Palma, who is a professor of English and the coordinator of professional writing and rhetoric at Baylor University. Hello, Michael John. We have Associate Professor Michelle Eadie, who some of you might be quite familiar with. He was on the current board of directors of ACEN. And Michelle is an Associate Professor in Curriculum and Pedagogy in the School of Education at the University of Wollongong, Australia. We also have Assistant Professor Radhika Jaydev, who has taught academic, technical, and professional writing to undergraduate and graduate students for over 3 decades, a wealth of experience. And Radhika is from Singapore Institute of Technology. It is our greatest pleasure to bring this event to you on behalf of ACEN, and thank you so very much to our international presenters. What I'll do now is hand over to the speakers for the presentation.
Thanks, Bonnie. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you. I know that spring has sprung in Australia, and we're starting to be really busy again, and it's nice outside, and people are going for walks at lunchtime because the sun is shining. So I really appreciate everyone who's come live. I know that there was over 150 people who had registered for this session, and we hope that some of you who are listening to this recording will be able to provide us with some feedback as well. So I'm Michelle Eadie. I'm at the University of Wollongong, And I'm really excited. I wanted to introduce you to my friends live, and I wanted them to come here and be at the beach with me and to see where we live. We haven't been able to do that thanks to COVID, but here they are. I'm actually in my living room. So I told them they're in my living room too. And I was saying to ACEN, I wanted this to work really well because it's like when you have international friends that come and visit you, you want the house to be clean and you want everything to go smoothly. So I'm going to try really hard to make that happen. We came together as a group of researchers through Elon Center for Engaged Learning. Elon is a university in North Carolina, a little bit a ways from Raleigh, North Carolina. And they run these amazing workshops where they have researchers from around the world who are interested in similar topics, who come together over 3 years. You spend 1 week every summer, or July, Canadian summer, North American summer, at the institution, and you work together as a group and you get to be together. We live in residence like university kids and have a great time, and work on a project that's interesting to us. And the topic of the 3-year seminar that we looked at was writing beyond the university. And I was lucky enough to be paired with these folks. So we've been working for that long together since 2019, and we collected our data over a 2-year period from 2019 through to the end of 2020. So I just wanted to make you aware that this is the definition of will that we're going to be using for this study. I realize there's many different variations of this, and now with the new handbook out by Pretty and Zegward, there's a definition there as well. We used this definition that was created at the University of Wollongong with Bonnie Dean, actually, who was just speaking, leading that team. And so just thought I put that up for you so you see what we're talking about when we're talking about will for this piece. And here's the framework that came out of that definition. So when we're talking about different types of will, and you'll see when we're speaking today, we're talking about embedded will and applied will. We're talking about participation in work practices where students are applying, they're practicing, they're adapting, they're reflecting, they're investigating in a simulation of a workplace or a workplace or work-based place. And so that's what we're talking about. Others might call that internships. And there's different definitions of that from America as well that we'll find out from our friends as we move forward. So we talked about, why writing and why did we start with writing? Well, because this was a writing piece, and it was about writing beyond the university, I actually showed up into this room and I was with this mega minds of writing composition and me, the will practitioner. And I thought, oh, what am I doing here? All of these people know so much about writing and writing composition. And we had a huge discussion about work integrated learning and writing, and what kind of writing do we do when we're doing will? And so it doesn't really matter if you're studying to be a lawyer or a computer scientist or an engineer, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher. Our undergraduates need to be highly capable communicators to thrive in their careers, and the cultivation of writing transfer knowledge practices across the professions should be part of will, and what we do to prepare our students for their will when it comes to writing is really important, and turns out to have some lovely overlaps between writing and will and writing transfer in the will space. So we're really lucky today to have kind of, the person around writing transfer, Kara Tasic, with us today, and she's going to take us through a little bit about writing transfer itself.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be with you all today. I am at the University of Central Florida. So I'm going to be talking us through what writing transfer is, specifically looking at teaching for transfer, which is something that I helped co-design many decades ago. So just really briefly, the teaching for transfer curriculum is designed to encourage students to become active agents in their course, and they use their own writings to develop their understanding of what and how to transfer writing both currently into other experiences and forward. The teaching for transfer curriculum includes 3 specific components, as you can see: key rhetorical terms, a reflective framework, and a theory of writing. And these are meant to encourage transfer from a writing course to other writing contexts. and that also includes outside of school context. The key rhetorical terms, there are 8 that we use to guide readings, class activities, and major assignments. These 8 terms were originally reduced from 11 that we decided to pare down. We introduce them, model, and reiterate them throughout the term. And I can go into more specifics later about them, but we have a very specific set of them. And then students bring them into life and enrich them through their by drawing on the prior and current writing experiences. Really specific to our framework is the reflective, really specific to our curriculum is the reflective framework. So the reflective framework is, you want to hit this next slide? I can't hit it. Thank you. Is this 360-degree reflection, which for us means it's reiterative and intentional. And this looks at 3 different ways for us. So we have students do a series of reflective readings to help them learn about reflection as a theory and a practice. Through it, we have them do reflective activities, prompting students to examine their beliefs and attitudes and understandings about writing, and then through reflective assignments to link the reflective activities together. The 360-degree reflection means that their students are constantly reflecting forward and backward, inward and outward, so that they're not just looking backward to look forward, but they're also looking inward so that they understand what they're doing, and they also can project themselves outward. The goal of this framework is to help support what we call the theory of writing. And this theory of writing is developed early in the course so that students can theorize how they understand writing, and then help them better understand future writing tasks. So this course was originally developed in 2008, and then we have looked at it in 3 different, we have basically complicated it and looked at it in 3 different iterations. The first one is phase 1, the teaching for transfer phase, and was done on one site at Florida State University. And we were basically just looking at whether or not the teaching for does writing transfer, or what content transfers, and we wanted to know about reflection specifically. And one of our main findings was, yes, it is a specific content that does transfer. The second phase of our research, that we called it the transfer of transfer, we extended it out into 5 specific sites, and we wanted it to be a more diverse. So 2 upper level writing courses, and more diverse campuses, so not just an R1 flagship school. And we also widened our questions. We wanted to know more about how the curriculum could be adapted to support different types of students in different campuses. And then our third and last was the Writing Passport project, and again made it even bigger and broader, doing a first of its kind study that brought together 2-year and 4-year colleges. And we were wondering how on 8 different college campuses, how the TFT could be supported and adapted, and if it could in fact be flexible. And what we have found is that yes, in fact, TFT can be adapted and flexible for very different types of students, and adapted. And that has led to the project that Michelle started at the beginning.
And so I'm just going to turn it over to Roddy now to tell you a little bit about what we looked at as a will and writing group.
Hi, everyone. My name is Radhika. I'm so happy to be here with you. Okay, so when we started to work together, the research question that we looked at was, in what ways does will affect writers' ability to transfer writing knowledge and practice? And with further brainstorming, we decided that To do this effectively, we need pre and post surveys, reflections, and that would include the 360-degree reflections that Katie was just talking about, artifact-based interviews, and portfolios. And during the course of the WIL experience, each member of our research team collected 4 kinds of data in their respective institutional contexts. These would be the pre and post surveys, the written reflections, or the 360 reflection that I just talked about, artifact-based interviews, and student writing samples, be they portfolios and other artifacts. Moving on. Yeah, so this is the data that we collected eventually. Pre-surveys with students, 79 of them. The reflections, 360 reflections with students, 61. Interviews with practitioners, 34. Post surveys with students, 48. And back to school interviews, 31. And portfolios and artifacts, 23 of them. Over to Michelle. Over to...
Yeah, it's back to me. So there you can see some examples of the kind of data that we were collecting, things that students were writing while they were on their WIL, while they were doing their WIL placements. Some of them were doing Instagram posts or tweets or website designs. Some of them were writing newspaper articles. Some of them were writing invitations, obituaries even. You'll like this one that's interesting. There's a group of students who had to prepare obituaries for deaths that will eventually happen of, old professors at universities. So just know that there is such a thing, that there's students that do that, for those of you who are out there wondering. And we took a look at all of that data. So it ended up being quite a lot of data. It was collected over a period of time that looked something like this. So we first had our pre-surveys with the students in autumn 2019. They did their university coursework, and then they were doing their placements. And when they were doing internships or practicums or placements or doing their workplace piece, they were doing that 360 reflection, where they did reflection 1, 2, and 3, and they had their workplace writing interview. And then when they completed that, there was a post survey, and they came back into the university setting or the tertiary setting and did another interview. We also collected portfolios of their work as well. And this happened across Singapore, Australia, the United States, and Germany. So there's a really nice global kind of perspective of what students are doing in writing when they're out in doing their WIL. So some of the questions we were asking were things like, describe the writing you've done prior to this course, and what do you think good writing is, and how are you going to use the writing that you already have when you're out on your WIL placement? And when you're on your WIL placement, do you think you're going to learn more about writing? And what ways do you think that writing that you learned in this course might influence you with the writing that you've done on your placement? And I'm not sure what folks think here, and maybe you can put that in the chat, or you can think about that for the breakout room, but have you thought much about the kind of writing that your students have to do? Now, I teach teachers, so I need to think about how they're going to write lesson plans, and how they're going to write report cards, and how they're going to prepare documents for the classroom and things like that. And how about in your situation? Have you seen that in your own situation and thought about that? And then the post-survey questions were things like, well, what did you do when you were in your WIL placement? And what were some of the key terms that you saw? What kinds of writing do you think that you might do now in the future because of what you learned on your WIL placement? So just to give you an idea of those kinds of questions that we were asking the students, so that we could get this information from them. So our colleague Ina is now going to take us through her little bit that she, while she rests, but she's videoed for us.
Hi, everybody. The first thing that I'm going to explain is our process of data analysis. We applied this process to the entirety of the verbal data, that is, to the pre and post surveys, the written reflections, as well as the transcribed interviews. In our data analysis, we progressed through 2 distinct phases. The first phase was focused on a grounded theory reading approach. That is, that each team member went through the data individually and identified themes that they saw coming up. And then we got together as a group to agree on common themes. And only themes that were really agreed upon by the entire group were accepted for the first phase of analysis. The second phase was based on the teaching for transfer key terms that KT has explained earlier in the presentation. That is, we created a code book based on the key terminology from the TFT framework and identified in the data where these different codes or key terms were showing up. As our unit of analysis, we chose either lexical items individually or complete propositions. I'm going to explain how that works in a minute. In order to make sure that our codebook is reliable and that there is intercoder agreement, we used 2 coders per segment so that each segment of the data would be coded by 2 people who had to agree on the different codes as they were applied to the data set. What you can see here is an excerpt from our codebook with a code that can be applied to individual lexical items. It is the genre code. So as you can see, our codebook offers a definition of the code as we understand it, of the key term as we utilize it. It also offers cases, either regular common cases or specific cases, and explanations of what coders should keep in mind. And on the right-hand side, you see a range of examples for that code, where you can also see how the code can apply to individual lexical items, such as obituary or brochure, and also to combinations of lexical items, such as newspaper article or journal article or case study. Here is a further example from our codebook with codes that can be applied to complete propositions. These complete propositions may be the same thing as a complete sentence, but it can also be applied to incomplete sentences. And I'm going to use a couple of examples to explain this. What you see highlighted in light blue is the purpose code, where participants talk about the purpose either of writing in general or the writing that they saw in their full experience or the writing that they do on a regular basis in their job. And on the right-hand side in the examples column, you can see how one section in which the person continues to talk about purposes of writing is separated into distinct units of analysis. So the person starts with a complete sentence saying that good writing is when the writing changes you. That is obviously one purpose of writing as we understand it. The next unit of analysis is again a complete sentence. Maybe it opens your eyes to a different perspective. And then we proceed to a third unit because the person mentions another purpose of writing or different data set. This is obviously not a complete sentence, but it still counts as a unit of analysis for us as a complete proposition because the person mentions a purpose of writing and you can actually understand that. You can also see a similar example.
So I might just stop there because I'm just watching the time. So that video is going to be embedded. And if you want to go back and you're interested in the data analysis and how specifically the data was looked at, then that's available to everyone to listen to around how we did that. So I'm going to turn it over to MJ to talk to us a little bit about what we found.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us today. My name is Michael John De Palma. I'm a professor and director of professional writing and rhetoric at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to share our research with you today. I'm going to begin with a brief overview of writing across the professions, and then I'll discuss the 4 dimensions of this writing across the professions faculty development model that we developed based on the research that my colleagues described to you earlier. So writing across the professions is a curricular model developed to create better opportunities for faculty to prepare students for the writing that they'll do within the context of WIL. And important to this model is that it centers on encouraging successful transfer among writing contexts. So faculty teaching in WIL could benefit by emphasizing that transfer of writing knowledge and practices across contexts isn't simply a matter of following a universal set of rules that can be applied in any situation. Rather, transfer of writing is informed by the student's ability to analyze the genres or kinds of writing they engage with and the communities that mediate a given writing task. Also, the ability to seek and receive engaged feedback on their writing and critically reflect on how their prior knowledge and practices as writers may be used or reshaped to suit a writing task are really important to writing-related transfer. And so there are several approaches that could be taken to create a sustainable writing across the professions model in higher ed contexts. So ideally, universities would benefit by creating writing across the professions directors who are equipped to facilitate the training of faculty who are teaching in WIL courses, contexts, and those that facilitation would center on how best to integrate writing transfer theories, pedagogies, and practices in students' WIL experiences across the disciplines. And so a central priority for writing across the professions directors would be creating partnerships, fostering collaboration, and maintaining regular communication with employers and WIL faculty in order to be responsive to the dynamic and changing writing demands across a variety of professions. And so writing across the professions directors would develop frameworks, pedagogical strategies, training workshops that would equip faculty in their university settings to integrate writing in productive and meaningful ways. The position of a writing across the professions director would likely be situated differently depending on the university context. So for example, some institutions might have a WAP director who's housed in a Center for Engaged Learning, maybe a writing across the curriculum program, a Center for Career and Professional Development, Academy for Teaching and Learning, or a Center for WIL Excellence. And so the WAP framework includes 4 different dimensions of faculty development. And our research team developed these dimensions in response to the self-initiated learning strategies that professionals and interns in our study used in their efforts to learn to write for their professional context. And so a central goal of these 4 dimensions is to support faculty in their efforts to better prepare students who are engaged in WIL experiences to write for their professions. And so the first dimension of WAP training, and this is the rhetorical genre theory, Michelle, the first slide there. The first dimension of WAP training entails preparing faculty to introduce students to rhetorical genre theory and genre analysis. The potential value of preparing faculty to introduce students to rhetorical genre theory and genre analysis in the context of WIL became evident to our research team as we reflected on a self-initiated learning strategy that several professionals and interns in our study employed, namely modeling the writing of colleagues or supervisors in their workplace context and in their wider professional fields. So examples of genres or types of writing, right, might include lesson plans, business proposals, memos, Instagram posts, email correspondence. And so as professionals are attempting to discern how to write for a given situation, they can't simply view models of writing as static templates that are going to fit any context. Conventions of text instead should be understood in relationship to the dynamics of the particular context in which a text is written. So as professionals write, they want to consider the interplay between needs, values, hierarchies, habits of mind, social practices, power dynamics in a given workplace setting. And then how are the textual conventions of written artifacts animated by those various places or contexts in which the writing is happening? And so that's a way to understand how to produce appropriate text for a given situation, rather than sort of thinking about writing as a one-size-fits-all practice. And so teaching WIL students rhetorical genre theory, methods of genre analysis could better prepare them to learn how to use their knowledge of various kinds of writing to write for their professions. The second component of our writing across the professions model involves preparing faculty to teach the concept of discourse community and methods of discourse community analysis. Here, the potential payoff of equipping faculty to introduce students to discourse community theory and discourse community analysis became clear to our team as we reflected on the efforts of professionals and interns in our study to analyze the communication practices of stakeholders in their professional environments. And so this idea of discourse community is defined by writing scholars as a social group whose members communicate at least in part through written text and whose texts are shaped by the goals, values, social norms of particular communities. And so examples of discourse community might include workplaces, extracurricular clubs, religious groups, online communities, a range of other groups. And so in analyzing the dimensions of a professional discourse community, such as a new workplace setting, writing scholar Ann Beaufort offers the following units of analysis that professionals who write might consider as they seek to navigate the writing demands of their professional context. One, goals and values of the community's communication practices, typical genres or kinds of writing that are done there, norms of those kinds of writing or the conventions, thinking about the relationships between various kinds of text or the different genre networks that exist, and then also writers' tasks, roles, and social positions. So teaching writers to analyze their rhetorical context through this framework of discourse community theory could enable composers to gain deep understanding of the shifting dynamics and expectations of different writing situations. Next slide, please. The third dimension of WAP is training that acquaints faculty with scholarship on responding to student writing. And so the value of acquainting faculty with scholarship on responding to student writing came evident to our research team as we talked to professionals and interns who discussed the importance of routinely seeking out and providing feedback on the writing of other professionals in their particular fields of expertise. So even though a majority of professionals and interns are required to write extensively and regularly to meet the demands of their workplace environments, very few view themselves as writers, and many lack awareness about the important ways that writing mediates the work that they do. So one way to change perceptions of future professionals with regard to their professional identities and the roles of writing in their workplace context is to prepare faculty to provide students in WIL experiences with substantive and engaged feedback on their writing. Next slide, please. And then the final aspect of writing across the professions training would entail equipping WIL faculty to facilitate student reflection on their writing knowledge and practices. The varied learning histories shared by the professionals and interns in our study allowed us to see the potential value of preparing faculty to facilitate student reflection about their writing knowledge and practices across contexts. Writing transfer research, as Kara mentioned, right, emphasizes the important role of critical reflection in helping writers transfer their prior writing knowledge and practices across contexts, genres, different writing media. And so students who are engaged in WIL could benefit significantly if given structured opportunities to critically reflect on the ways that their writing knowledge and practices might be used, and then also reshaped or adapted for the writing they're doing in the context of WIL and the writing they'll do in their future professions. And so the method of reflection that really is well suited to facilitating the transfer of writing knowledge is the 360 reflection that we used as part of our research, but also that Kara designed, right, as this really robust form of critical reflection that's focused on helping students think about how their experiences before, after, and during WIL experiences can help them gain insight into the ways in which they might approach writing, attitudes about writing, their expectations as writers, the way knowledge of writing was affected during the course of the WIL experience. And so foregrounding critical reflection of this kind is really vitally important to fostering writing-related transfer in the context of WIL and then also beyond. So in sharing these dimensions of our writing across the professions framework, our hope is for higher ed professionals, faculty who teach in WIL, to be better prepared to equip undergraduates for diverse rhetorical demands that they'll be required to navigate in WIL and throughout their professional lives. So we're still in the process of developing and refining the dimensions of writing across the professions that we've shared here, and we welcome any feedback that you have. Thank you so much for your time, and we're happy to answer questions that you might have.
That was pretty quick for this group, Bonnie, but I'm going to pass it back to you. I think that you're going to have a few words here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much to all of the speakers. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a moment to digest the wonderful results and findings from this study and find ways that we can explore how it relates to you in your context. I'm going to now open up the breakout rooms, and we'll be going in those rooms for approximately maybe 12 to 15 minutes. You will see an invitation come up on your screen now, so please go into those rooms and enjoy a wonderful conversation and connect with one another. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.